The sun has become a hot topic these days, with legislations passed on artificial sun and tanning, and international journals abound with controversial studies on its importance for life and health on our planet. 500 photobiologists from all over the world discussed the topic during 5 days of their annual conference, ICP, in Düsseldorf, Germany. The healing, life-saving sun on one side, the danger of skin cancer incidents on the other. After 50 years of one-sided focus on the negative influence of sunlight, there seems to emerge a certain rediscovery of the good sun. The amazing flood of scientific discoveries about vitamin D and its protective and healing powers has turned the tides. Professor Michael F. Holick from Boston University, by far the best-known researcher on sunlight and vitamin D, lectured an enthusiastic audience at the ICP conference, giving a somewhat breathless chase through the wealth of actual facts on vitamin D, the sunshine vitamin. Almost all the cells in our bodies are influenced by vitamin D. Epidemic vitamin D deficiency is responsible for drastically rising risks for many of the most widespread ailments, such as osteoporosis, diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular diseases, stroke, and even psychiatric disorders. Holick's advice to the general public: more sun, but with moderation. The backside of the coin was presented by the German biophysicist from Hamburg, Dr. Rüdiger Greinert. Each sun ray on your skin counts and accumulates into a rising risk for skin cancer, including melanoma. Skin cancer incidence has been rising over the last 50 years and, according to Greinert, this can be blamed almost exclusively to sun and solarium. The Norwegian scientist Johan Moen pointed to the hundreds of reliable scientific studies, including many of his own, that prove that moderate sun exposition and a corresponding level of vitamin D serum in the blood not only protects against many illnesses, including many cancers, but also helps people survive cancers. Especially the warnings of many dermatologists to avoid midday sun is, in Moen's opinion, a deadly wrong advice. The morning and afternoon sun could cause more damage unnoticed than the sun at noon. However, Professor Moen also warned against an excess amount of sun on the skin. Moderation was his message. Professor Michael Holick, doyen of UV and vitamin D research after 30 years of uphill battle for recognition in the scientific community, focuses on the problem.
50% of the world's population is vitamin D deficient, and we believe that it has serious health consequences for both children and adults alike.
The reason for this rising epidemic?
The major cause is lack of sun exposure. Humans have always depended on the sun for their vitamin D requirement, and it's over the past 40 years that it's been suggested that you should never be exposed to direct sunlight. That is one of the major causes of the vitamin D deficiency pandemic.
But why, if this problem is so pressing, does it play such a moderate role in medical everyday practice?
Again, everybody thinks about vitamin D preventing rickets in children. We don't see rickets any longer, so people are not thinking about vitamin D. It's incomprehensible to physicians as to how vitamin D can reduce risk of heart attack by 50%, reduce risk of common cancers like colon, prostate, breast by as much as 50%, reduce risk of infectious diseases, including influenza, by as much as 90%, reducing risk of type 1 diabetes, 78%, if a child is getting adequate vitamin D during the first year of life, reduces risk of type 2 diabetes.
European health systems are ailing and running out of money. Couldn't the sun and vitamin D play a major role in easing the pressure?
Well, it is quite remarkable that probably one of the most important nutrient hormones that humans need is, in fact, coming from the sun for free. But you have to take advantage of it. And it doesn't mean to go out and bake in the sun. What it simply means is to go out between the hours of about 10 a.m. and 3 p.m., and usually in the spring, summer, and fall, and arms and legs couple of times a week is often more than adequate to satisfy your body's requirement for vitamin D.
But what can we do during the so-called vitamin D winter, when the sun cannot provide us with a vital amount of vitamin D?
And we found that healthy young and middle-aged adults going to a solarium in Boston once a week had robust, healthy levels of vitamin D, and they had better bone density than their counterparts that were not exposed to solarium. The reason that's important is that in the wintertime in Europe, as well as in the United States, you cannot make any vitamin D in your skin. And so if you're not aggressively taking a vitamin D supplement, and we now know that children need at a minimum 1,000 units of vitamin D a day, adults need 2,000 units of vitamin D a day to satisfy the requirement, they will not be able to appreciate all of the health benefits of vitamin D.
So this leaves us with the question of how much sun, how much vitamin D we actually need.
Well, I think just like anything else in life, it's moderation should be the message. And that's my message to the public, is that you should never get a sunburn.
But
abstinence doesn't work. So we should really be out there recommending sensible sun exposure, which is what I've been doing for more than 30 years.
Ask for the dark side of the sun. Its power to cause skin cancer, particularly melanoma, the deadliest form of skin cancer.
But in my opinion, there is no credible evidence that sensible sun exposure will increase your risk of melanoma above and beyond what is the general rate of melanoma risk in the population. Occupational sun exposure decreases your risk of melanoma. It does not increase your risk.
And finally, is the sun, natural or artificial, friend or foe?
But we know that sensible sun exposure reduces risk of deadly cancers, reduces risk of infectious diseases, autoimmune diseases, hypertension, heart disease, stroke. And recently it's been suggested that even dementia and schizophrenia. So again, the message is simple. Sunlight is your friend, but use it in moderation.
Dr. Greinert, member of diverse radiation control organizations, argues by doubt.
Ich habe überhaupt nichts dagegen, wenn sich herausstellen sollte, dass Vitamin D so einen krebsprotektiven Effekt
If indeed the preventive effect of vitamin D for cancer will be scientifically proven, I, of course, have no qualms with that. The fact that we find a vitamin D receptor at many cell surfaces seems to suggest a much greater role of vitamin D than just bone and bone density. But that will need much more time and reliable scientific studies.
belastbar mit nach draußen gehen.
He defends himself against accusations of partisanship and one-sidedness.
Wir haben wirklich nicht gesagt, also die Leute sollen noch weniger in die Sonne gehen, sondern wir haben gesagt, dass
We never advise people to stay out of the sun. We tell the people to no longer expose themselves to the sun than necessary, to get all the sun the body really needs.
erzielen kannst. Und das ist diese berühmte Viertelstunde oder sowas, die wir dann sagen, dann kann man draußen spazieren gehen in der Mittagssonne und dann wird man sein Vitamin D für diesen Tag dann auch schon bekommen.
Professor Johann Mohn, physicist by education, offers an even stronger statement in favor of sun and solarium than his colleague, Professor Holick. In his research, he and his colleagues discovered the life-saving capacity of the sun and vitamin D.
What we have found is that about 13 of the most important internal cancers are related to the low vitamin D status. So a low vitamin D status is a risk factor for these. The sun can definitely make skin melanomas, and it can protect against them. So it is a dual effect in a way, because a proper sunbed used properly in the winter would be an absolutely good thing. I think it is good for us who originate from the equator, where you get vitamin D throughout the year. Probably people there have a flat vitamin D level, not like us, up and down with the season. I think the best for the body is to have a stable level throughout. And the way to achieve that would be to have proper sunbeds used properly in the winter.
And what about sunbeds? Are they part of the problem or rather a part of the solution?
Both, I think, both. Because a proper sunbed used properly in the winter would be absolutely good. The best for the body is to have a stable level throughout. And the way to achieve that would be to have proper sunbeds used properly in the winter.
In other words, it is scientific state-of-the-art that sunbeds can contribute to maintaining an adequate vitamin D level all through the year, particularly in vitamin D winter. Professor Mohn's advice: get more sun, irrespective of source, but take only a rationally controlled, healthy dose.